Hello everyone, welcome to In Focus program. Today's topic of discussion is Indian PMs at US Congress. Points of discussion will be background of the news, addresses delivered by other Indian Prime Ministers, India-US ties and practice questions. First of all, moving on to the background of the news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in New York on June 19, commencing his first state visit to the United States since assuming office in 2014. During his visit, he is scheduled to lead the International Yoga Day celebrations on Wednesday and engage in a series of meetings with US President Joe Biden over the course of 3 days. These meetings include a private engagement, a state dinner, and a lunch jointly hosted by Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. A notable highlight of Modi's visit is his address to a joint session of the US Congress on June 22, marking the second time an Indian Prime Minister has been honored with this opportunity. Previously, only a few Indian Prime Ministers have delivered speeches to members of Congress. Now moving on to addresses by other Indian Prime Ministers. Jawaharlal Nehru. During the period when relations between India and the US were in their early stages, Nehru addressed a reception in the Ways and Means Committee room in the new House Office building. His speech, delivered in a time of skepticism in Washington, D.C. due to his policy of non-alignment and socialist views, aimed to promote understanding and cooperation between the two countries. Rajiv Gandhi. Seen as close to the Soviet bloc, India claimed non-alignment but had differences with the US, particularly concerning Pakistan's armament. Rajiv's visit, however, turned out to be highly successful, receiving positive feedback from Secretary of State George P. Shultz and fostering the beginning of high technology transfers and space cooperation. P.V. Narasimha Rao. During a time when the Soviet Union had collapsed, the Cold War had ended, and India had embarked on economic reforms, Rao emphasized looking toward the future without dwelling on the past. His speech highlighted the importance of democracy and development, expressing India's commitment to continuing the partnership with the US. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Following a nuclear test that resulted in global sanctions, Vajpayee's government was unveiling economic reforms and the IT sector in India was experiencing significant growth. In his address, he emphasized the need to re-examine old assumptions, discussed security concerns, and conveyed India's commitment to being an indispensable factor of stability in the region. Manmohan Singh. With the economic relationship between India and the US flourishing, Singh's address came at a time when the two countries were working towards a higher strategic level of ties. He highlighted India's impeccable record in nuclear non-proliferation and stressed the importance of fighting terrorism together as it poses a threat to democracy worldwide. Narendra Modi 2016. During President Barack Obama's final year in office, Modi arrived in the US when the India-US partnership was at its peak. The relationship had witnessed significant growth in trade, defense purchases, and foreign direct investment. In his speech, Mr. Modi acknowledged the strengthening ties between the two countries and expressed gratitude to the US Congress for playing a pivotal role in fostering this partnership. These addresses by Indian Prime Ministers to the US Congress reflect the evolving dynamics of the India-US relationship and the shared goals of cooperation, understanding and progress between the two nations. Now let's discuss about India-US ties. In September 2008, after the Nuclear Suppliers Group or NSG's wavered to the Indo-US nuclear deal, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said it marks the end of India's decades-long isolation from the nuclear mainstream and technology denial regime. In June 2016, Prime Minister Narendra Modi told the US Congress that India and the US have overcome the hesitations of history and called for ever stronger economic and defense ties. 6 years later, the end of the technology denial regime and the overcoming of the hesitations of history had developed into the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies, which President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi announced in May 2022. The initiative is looking at technologies to be shared in critical sectors such as defense, space, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. Now moving on to practice questions. First of all, prelims question. Consider the following statements about the US Constitution. 1. The US Constitution is rigid in its format and consists of only 7 articles and 27 amendments. 2. The present federal government of USA came into being in the year of 1789. 3. It is the first constitution of the world. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? 1 only, 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, or 1, 2 and 3. And now mains question. Comment on the differences between Indian fundamental rights and the USA Bill of Rights. So that's all for today. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching.